Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Speed and Grease. And if it's your first time, thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. In this episode, I'm grateful to have had Chris Weinkauf join us. If you've been around super late model racing in Wisconsin, in the Midwest, you certainly know his name. I remember as I was growing up and moved away from racing at go-kart tracks and started racing at Golden Sand Speedway and other central Wisconsin tracks, Chris was really on the rise in his successful racing career, even though around that time frame, he had been racing for a while and had already been successful, but he was really on the rise during that period of time. And Chris and I kind of crossed paths a little bit in both of our racing careers as right around the 2011, I started racing an Ed Holmes left-hander for Gary Kovleski and his wife. And Chris had been running an Ed Holmes left-hander for several years at that point. And throughout this episode, Chris talks a lot about Ed Holmes, and rightfully so, as Ed was a very important figure in his racing career and as well as mine. So it was a lot of fun to chat with him about those days and racing in that time and racing with Ed and everyone around it at that time. Chris shares a lot of stories of growing up farming, his first race hauler, and just a lot of great moments and fun times, not only in his racing career, but his life as well. It was awesome getting to know him a little bit better and to getting to know more about him. And I hope you get to know more about him too. And I hope you really enjoy this episode. It was a lot of fun and had a great time. So let's get into it. Well, thanks for coming, Chris. I appreciate you wanting to make the drive down and do this.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I appreciate the opportunity. It's always cool to get the stories out a little bit,
Yeah. No, a lot of people have been loving hearing the stories that people have told, and I know you and I kind of have a kind of close bit of history back in the left-hander Ed Holmes days back in very beginning of my super late model career. Yeah. So maybe we'll touch on some of that stuff. But yeah. I know one of the things I want to ask, what year did you get into super late model racing? Super late model racing
was probably around 96, 97.
96, 97.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I won't tell you when I was born.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's been a long time. You reach them years. I just noticed yesterday that you said 25 years.
Yeah.
And that's kind of crazy to think about it,
Yeah, I came up at the time when people were starting really, really young, and yeah, I've been pretty fortunate for that.
Yeah. And, and I remember creeping up to 30, and hitting that mark. It was exciting. And then you look back and you're like, wow, I spent 30 years doing this,
Yeah, I think 25 years. I'm like, man, it's a quarter of a century. I'm like, yeah, wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, I started at 15, so I don't know.
I'm 31.
What year did you start?
Yes, I was 7. Was my first.
7? Yeah, and go karts and stuff.
Go-karts,
yep. Yeah, I didn't do any of the go kart stuff. I started right in back then the bomber division.
Okay.
Tomahawk and State Park Speedway and stuff like that. Dabbled a little bit in Golden Sands in that division. I think Golden Sands had hobby stocks back then, so when you go there with a bomber car, you were a little bit underpowered, but it was just fun to go there and try it.
So you're saying even back then the rules weren't the same from track to track?
No, back then they weren't. No. And they're so close. They're only an hour away, so it'd be weird that they wouldn't be. But, yeah, there was never really a hobby stock at State Park Speedway. It was like the bombers, and then, well, it used to be the PEC-style bombers. They would race one race at the end of the night, and
okay. I never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, before they actually started, and this would have been probably like 89-ish, 88, 89, they would have like a PAC-style bomber race at the end of the race.
Okay.
Or the end of the night, and they'd get, 50 cars out there and run around for how many ever laps. Well, then in 90 or 89, 90, had been right around there. 90s when I started, they'd started qualifying and dashes and heats and features and stuff like that. So Yeah. And I was fortunate enough to win a feature right off the bat in one of my first years.
That'll get the hooks put in it pretty early.
That'll get the itch. That'll get the itch going. Yeah. Grew up on a dairy farm, really, just to start a little bit. My dad grew up on a dairy farm. He always had a passion for cars, you know, even growing up. You know, my grandpa was one of them guys that would buy a car, didn't really fix them. So if it broke down, he would just pull it in the back field and go to town and get another car. Well, by the time my dad got of age, there's 10 cars out in the field, and he just started tinkering on them. And him and his buddy that lived next door, you know, they always liked cars. They would go to the races at State Park, you know, religiously, you know, so they can tell you stories, the Trickle stories and the Ruffner stories and all that stuff. And my dad got a job in town, bought a farm himself, obviously met my mom, got married, started having kids, and bought a farm. And, you know, he was a farmer, so he wanted to be a farmer. My mom, you know, followed him with that passion. And pretty soon, now we're living in the country farming. And when I was like 11, we had a barn fire, actually, and lost everything.
Okay. And were you guys doing milking or
milking?
Like beef? Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
Milking. Yeah, so that would have been 86. And my parents decided to buy another farm.
Okay.
So an established farm that had bigger and all this kind of stuff, because theirs kind of started out as a hobby farm and, you know, created it into a dairy farm. But then when we lost everything, they decided to go and buy another one, start over. We moved to Merrill, which was only about 5 miles north of where we were, but it was in the Merrill address, so we started going to school in Merrill and all that kind of stuff. So we're still around our family and where my dad grew up and stuff like that. And then it was just, you know, living on a farm and tinkering with stuff and kind of grew up a little bit. My grandpa had an old car there. Again, my grandpa had a car there and just started tinkering around with it. And again, my dad always loved racing, so he would take us kids to the races as much as possible, whether it be a Thursday night State Park race. Our family vacations were going to the Dixieland 250, you know.
Sure.
So, but, you know, we did have...
That was a huge... I mean, it's a big deal now, but that was a huge deal then, you know.
Yeah. You know, that would be our vacation. We'd stop at the water park down here in Wapaka and go on the water slides and all that stuff in the afternoon and then go to the race at night. And that was basically our vacation as a family. So my dad's the one that really got us into the racing. You know, we didn't come from a racing family, a racing background.
Yeah.
It was just more my dad had that passion to, you know, for the race cars and tinker on it. And I don't know, I don't know if my dad's ever said that, but maybe he was living his dream through us. I don't know. You know, maybe he always wanted to get in a race car.
Yeah.
But he never did. And once we started racing, then it was pretty much over. We were all hooked on it, you know. From my older brother, Chad, was building the motors for us. And Jason, my younger brother, was helping. And, you know, then whole bomber years. My brother, Jason, never started in bombers. He actually started in late models later on.
Okay.
But I did the bombers from like 90, 91, 92, and then bought a late model after that.
Okay.
And, you know, just Tomahawk, State Park, Golden Sands. I got hooked on going to Columbus 151 every Friday night, too. I think that was right around the time Golden Sands didn't have late models.
Okay.
So
you were taking the
limited late models.
You're taking the limited late model on Columbus. Okay.
Yeah, so we'd race Thursday night at State Park, Friday at Columbus, and then up to Tomahawk on Saturday. So it was 3 nights a week. There was a couple Sunday shows, I think, at Golden Sands that we would maybe hit. But, yeah, it was a lot of racing back. And, you know, when you're that young, 17, 18 years old, just out of high school, and just running around all over the place racing.
What were you towing your race car with at that point? I always, you know, people always got, I feel like, good hauler stories, especially at that age.
I'm going to tell you what it was. It was my grandma's conversion van, believe it or not. So my grandma was big into flower arrangements and stuff like that. So she bought a van, and they would go to these shows, and so she had this van that she'd pack up. Well, then she got a little bit older, and okay, she wasn't going to the flower shows anymore. And I used to go with her when I was a younger kid and help her set up and do all that stuff. And as she got older,
you bring your wife a nice set of flowers a few times a year, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So, Grandma decided, she's not going to do that anymore. So here this conversion van is, and we converted it into a race hauler. The racks in there and all the spare parts, and we had everybody usually worked until like 3-ish on a Friday, especially the help that was helping us.
Yeah.
And we'd jump in the van and head down, probably grab a pizza on the way. I had a pizza oven in there and started a generator on a trailer with a cord and have a pizza on the way home.
Yeah.
And whatnot. So, yeah, it was some fun times. But, yeah, it was a conversion van for a very long time with an open trailer that I built in high school in the shop class. So I still actually have that open trailer. So, yeah, that was I borrowed a trailer always, and then in high school built an open trailer and used Grandma's conversion van. So
that's
good
cool.
times.
That's pretty cool. Now, before we get too far, some of the things that I wanted to kind of note right away, though, when it came to your super late model career, and then I'm going to jump back a little bit, but the ones that stick out in my mind, 2010 State Park Speedway champion, super late model. And then the one that I didn't realize when I was doing a little bit of digging, a 3-time Larry Detjens Memorial winner.
Yeah.
What's it like to win that race 3 times? I mean, that to me, that's one of the most premier races in the Midwest. That it always has been to me.
Yeah. It was amazing. Honestly, I wanted a limited late model as well. So
okay.
And I know it don't count, but I actually did win it 4 times in different divisions. But that night, that portion of the night, it wasn't always just the big event of the super lates. It was always a weekly show kind of back in the day too.
Yeah.
But it was still a big event. I wanted the first one on my own, with my own team and my own car, and that was when Uncle Dan was helping me, and we were always in the shop tinkering on that thing, roll centers and all that kind of stuff, and just met my wife and got married, and it was really cool and that's when they started the big races too, and won that first one on my own, which was amazing. You talk about the 2010 season. That was with the Kerslings and the 99. That was something that I feel was a highlight of my career as well. We kind of, dominated that season at State Park Speedway. And a lot of credit there was Ed Holmes. I know you have some history with Ed Holmes too, and such a great guy, such a great supporter. He's got some huge passion for racing, and I know when we started with Kerslings and he mentioned Ed, and I got to know Ed, and it was just like he's all in. He tries so hard to, even in his early career of driving himself, and then helping now and being a crew chief, and he was a big, huge part of that 2010 season. Was winning with the Kerslings. So, and then won one more with the Vandergeest team, and had that opportunity right off the bat when I started racing for him. We went there, another big show. Wasn't even in my car. It was in Jay's car that he had at the time, and we won that. So that was super cool there too. So there was really the Detjens Memorial and 3 different race teams. On all 3 of those. So tried again, a lot of years after that, just never had a lot of success after that. But and I shouldn't say that. We were pretty fast at State Park even after that, but as of late, not as great. The track changed a little bit. People caught up and really wasn't my sweet spot anymore as far as State Park. But
State Park's never really been my. I don't mind going there at times, but it's never been my sweet spot.
Yeah, it's sad that it's going away. Because it's so close.
Yeah,
and the history of it, and I see they're moving the No, no, they're not moving to Detjens race, are they? That one's done, or are they?
No, I think that's going to the Dells.
Dells.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah,
that's what it is. I thought so. So I know there was a lot of hype that maybe it would be the last one, but I do see that they are moving it. So yeah, I'm 3 times. I believe Mark Mackesy won it 3 times, and Dick Trickle won it 3 times. So I mean, to be in that category is pretty cool.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That. Yeah. I when I was looking back on something, I'm like, man, I didn't realize Chris won that 3 times. It's a pretty special race in my mind, and actually then the next one too, 2009 Oktoberfest Trickle 99 win. That's a tough race to win too. To put 3. I mean, I know the formats kind of changed a little bit over the years, but regardless of how they've had it, to put together 3 pretty good races and to come out on top against whatever that field usually is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that one was Ed Holmes's complete race car. That was his.
The Blue 21?
Yeah,
okay.
The Blue 21. That thing was bad, man. That thing was really fast.
I always like that car. It's probably because I'm partial to blue and white.
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, I did that. I love that car, too. That was one of them deals where I kind of talked Ed Holmes into that one. He's like, I'm building this house car, and I'm like, hey, can I drive it? Well, you got any money? Well, not really, but
it's weird how that goes hand in hand.
Drive it, and we were having so much success with that 99 that I think he had a lot of faith in me and saw some of the stuff that we were doing and the connection that we had and the direction we were going. He's like, let's give it a shot, and he worked on that thing religiously throughout the whole summer. So that thing was brand spanking new, and we took it to Oktoberfest. We went there the week before and did a test, and he had that. Everything was just perfect. So that was a brand new race car, and we took it there, and we unloaded it off the trailer, and it was fast. It was just, he had the right motor combination. He made sure that he how do you want to say it? Researched all that, and Wagner built the motor, and he had everybody there, and they tuned the exhaust, and they did all this stuff, and he spent a lot of time into making that race car fast when we got to the racetrack. And, I believe Cryer was fast that year, too. And I think, I'm not sure if we had fast time or if he had fast time. I thought we had fast time. He wound up winning the first segment. I was second.
Okay.
And then they do the invert.
Yep.
And come through the field. I don't know where we finished in that second one. Maybe in the top 5, something like that. And then really the third one got a good draw, got the pole. So
perfect.
Yeah. So that was a good, a very good draw for that last race, and then won that last segment. So yeah, Jason was coming. He was second in that last segment. I almost thought he was gonna run me down and beat me for that last segment. But yeah, you talk about a tough race to win. That is a tough race to win. You've won it, right?
I have won a segment twice.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever finished any. I think my highest finished overall was 4th.
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I think maybe they've changed some of the draws a little bit, but and how they do it. But yeah, it is a very tough race to win, especially the second segment. You got to kind of save your tires. Some people are flipping them on rims and doing all this stuff.
All sorts of weird things, yeah.
We didn't do any of that. We might have rotated, front to back, something like that. But conserve your tires in that second segment, but yet try to get up as many spots as you can. So yeah, it's a unique race, and I was fortunate enough to win it when Dick was still alive, so he was up on the stage with me, and
that's special.
And just him shaking his hand and getting that trophy from him, and now
having a piece of cheese with his signature on it. Yeah.
And now that he's gone, it's almost like how much more special that race is, and it was when you won it when he was still alive. Everybody hears the name Dick Trickle all over the country, right, and to have a race named after him and be able to win that race.
With him there and jumping up on stage with you.
Yeah, that was pretty special. Yeah.
For sure. Now we're going to get back to talking about your super late model career and other parts of it. But I want to jump way back. When you were younger, what else were you involved in? Like, I mean, did you do any other sports? Sports in school was Chris Weinkauf a all-star basketball athlete or
no, not really. One of the sports that we did as kids was wrestling.
Okay.
My older brother wrestled, Chad. I wrestled. My younger brother wrestled, and then we got a younger sister. She didn't wrestle, but she was kind of the young sister of the family. But
okay.
yeah, we dabbled in wrestling a little bit. I didn't go. I started racing in high school and decided I think this is what I want to do, and actually quit wrestling.
Okay.
My senior year. I regret that now. Really wish I would have stuck through that. And I tell that to a lot of young kids growing up, that story that I really wish I wouldn't have done that. Although I'm proud of what I did in the racing side of it too, and dedicated the time to do that. But really wish I probably would have stuck it out. Jason stuck it out. I think he finished second state his senior year. And then it was full-blown racing after that. Never really did anything else. It wasn't...
Sure.
It was farming, so us kids would milk cows before going to school.
I was going to ask that, if that was...
Yeah. I mean, it was... So, get home from school, farming, there really wasn't much time to do much else. When we were kids, you'd go to wrestling practice, and then there was a athlete bus that would bring you home, and there's still chores to do after that. So,
right, explains a little bit of why there wasn't a lot of family vacations too.
Yeah, exactly.
Farming ties you down.
Yeah, and farming was tough back then. Milk prices weren't doing that well. My dad wound up he used to work at a factory in Wausau before we started farming, and then they got laid off. And it was a case plant, and then they started it back up, started building bulldozers and all that stuff, so they called him back. And he's like, farming's really not doing that great. I think maybe I'm going to go back into town and work. Well, he goes, I think we can do both. Well, because his kids were getting older. Well, then it was mom and the kids getting up, milking cows in the morning, feeding them, going to school, dad getting home, helping us do all the chores at night.
Sure.
And then he go back to working during the day. And that did not last very long before you pretty much get burnt out.
Oh, yeah.
And especially after we started racing, then it was like, let's just sell the cows, sell the farm. Dad's working in town. Now we can just go racing. So that's what we did. And, kind of the rest is history.
Yeah. Trying to think there was something else I was going to ask about that. But go ahead.
I still live on the farm.
Okay.
Mom and dad still live on the farm. I built a house behind there in the cow pasture where we used to run around in the old car, back in the day. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So we still live on the homestead. My older brother lives there. He built the house. His son lives there. He built the house, and Jason and Beth are planning on building the house there on that same property too. So, yeah, it's all one big.
I see you throw some of those big parties in the pool. I mean, if I was in your family, I'd want to live close too.
Yeah, I like to have pool parties. We don't have any kids. So we invite the families over and just have some pool parties. So sometimes my wife probably wishes that I wouldn't have got a pool, but
everyone's got to have a fun uncle, right?
Yeah,
they got to be that guy.
Fun uncle. Yeah,
perfect.
Absolutely.
So what was your first bomber car? What was it?
Very first one. So I don't know if everybody knows Jeff from Hilltop, right? I mean, Hilltop Auto Wrecking.
I know Hilltop Auto Wrecking, of course.
Yeah,
I don't know Jeff.
Because they're on a lot of cars, but. Jeff was one of them pack-style bomber racers back in the day. And so Hilltop Auto Wrecking was really pretty close to where I grew up, where my dad grew up. We all kind of knew him as, friends and family. And then he was kind of like one of the guys that got us started in that and helped us out and, pointed us in the right directions. And then back in the day, you had a bomber car, you're going to get parts from Jeff at Hilltop because he's got them all. He's got them all stashed away,
Sure.
You looking for a control arm, and he'd go down row 4, blue truck, open the passenger side door. There's a lower A-arm sitting there, So he's kind of the guy that got us started in that a little bit. my cousins knew some people. They had an old car sitting in the barn and wanted to sell it. Because I was going to originally race my grandpa's old 4-door Impala. I'm like, Dad, let's strip this thing down and knock the windows out of it and take it to the track and race it in the Bombers. And he goes, I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea. We don't have time for that. We don't have all this. And I told my older cousins about it that live a couple miles down the road, and they're like, hey, there's a bomber car sitting in a barn over there. Why don't we just pull the motor out of the Impala and put it in that? And I'm 15 years old. I mean, who knows how to pull a motor out, really, at 14 years old. But,
yeah,
had some cousins that were a couple of years older, and they were motorheads. And
okay,
so there we are in the rafters of the tractor shed, pulling a motor out and sticking it in this car. And went to Tomahawk, scared crapless, you don't know anything what you're doing, and not a lot of guidance. You're coming in, well, just do this, do that, and put some air pressure in here, and here's some tires, and Jeff would give us some tires and whatnot, and went out there and had a blast, just doing that. Well, we didn't know anything about it. It wound up being a car that was all rusted out, and the A-arms, lower control arms in the back pulled out, and rear end's all cocked, and it's like, well, my dad got so hooked on it, he's like, I'm going to Hilltop, getting to Monte Carlo, and we're going to build our own cage. So that's what we did. We built our own car, got a car from Jeff at Hilltop, brought it home, started welding pipes together, and my older brother Chad was a big motorhead. He built the motor, and we stuffed it in there and went to Tomahawk. And like I said, that first year, won a race at Tomahawk and Wausau at State Park, and kind of the rest was history. Built another one. So we had two cars at one point in time, two bomber cars. My cousin would drive one once in a while, but
okay,
we got so involved in it that it was like, okay, maybe we'll have one for Wausau and one for Tomahawk. It was just, who has two race cars at 15 years old just to pick and choose from, really?
Right.
I mean, it's kind of crazy. But
yeah, any wild Tomahawk stories? I always hear a bunch of wild stories from Tomahawk, and it could be because all my stories are from people from down here going up there.
Yeah, it was tough up there. I call it, I mean, you always hear the stories about the good old days or good old boys or whatever you want to call it. Well, there was a good old boys club up there, really. One of the guys that kind of friended us was Dewey Bellin. I don't know if you ever heard of Dewey Bellin.
I don't think so.
Number 3. He was the number 3 car, had good wrench on the side of it and all that. Okay. Big old Dewey Bellin. And he had his crew chief was Frank. I don't think Frank's around anymore, but his crew chief was Frank, and just one heck of a nice guy. Kind of just came over and said, hey, how you doing, buddy? And it was just a really good dude, And then there was some dudes that weren't that good, weren't that cool. They were, Toby Selmer was one of them. Maybe he'll listen to this podcast, not really sure, but we weren't good of friends. He didn't like the fact that we were coming up there and winning. He was one of the guys that won a lot up there. And I wound up getting stuffed into the wall from Toby Selmer once and bent the horn over, and we were mad. It's like, what did you do that for? It was unnecessary. He did it on purpose. He was known to be, an aggressive driver, and kind of ticked us off. And
sure.
I didn't want to go back up there and retaliate because that wasn't the type of person that I was. I just wanted to beat him. I wanted to kick his butt on the racetrack. And that's basically what we did. And with help from other people and doing some testing, back in the day, you'd go up to Tomahawk during the afternoon. It'd be kind of like open practice. And we'd have Tull City retread tires. They were treaded tires, and you'd shave them, take a manual and shave them down.
Sure, yeah.
You'd run them till they're bald. And I wound up getting the track I never got a track championship in the bomber car, but I got the track record in the bomber car. And that was something that was really special, that we went there and just as a family and swapping rear springs out. And I remember the day we got the track record, the right rear tire had a pinhole in it. It was leaking so bad. Jason was standing by the right rear, just putting a little bit of air in there, right as I'm going out, and we wound up getting it. It still stands on the old racetrack because it was like the last year they had the old configuration, and then they repaved the year after. But, and then it was just going up there in late models and getting to know Lyle Nowak and Neil Knobloch. Neil turned out to be one of my best buddies up there. Just he kind of knew I was struggling a little bit when I first bought my first car. Took me under his wing, and he's like, "Bring your car down to my shop." And this is Neil. I mean, he's winning just about every race in a limited late model back in the day, and brought me and my dad, took the car to his mom and dad's garage, and just in town in Schofield there. We unloaded it out, put it on the scales. He noticed some things wrong with some wheels and adapters, and we fixed it, and he borrowed me some wheels, and we went to Tomahawk, and we were, like, competitive. I think it was actually like a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night. We went to his house, and I believe State Park Speedway was the possibly the Larry Detjens Memorial, and it got rained out. Okay. So they raced it on a Sunday afternoon, and I beat Neil that day. He says I was blocking him like crazy, which could have been, but it was my first big limited late model win. And his dad, I remember this day, he's like, "You're not bringing his car over to our shop anymore." But it was pretty cool. I mean, it was Neil and I got to be really good friends after that, and he'd borrow stuff from me. I probably borrowed more stuff from him than he borrowed from me. But I mean, Neil's even borrowed me race cars, whole race cars. When I blew a motor, he just said, "Here, take this race car and race it." And that was when I was running at the Dells. And
it takes a little confidence for a guy to offer that up to you.
Yeah. I bought my first super late from Neil.
Okay.
Yeah. So I bought my first limited late model from Chucky Abraham. I don't know if you know Chucky Abraham. Name. Yep. Bought it from him. He was actually a family friend, grew up with my dad.
Okay.
Back in the day, so they were neighbors. They were always gearheads too, so maybe that's where my dad got a little bit of it from.
What was your first limited late model?
I have no idea what the chassis was. I mean, I don't think anybody probably did. It was an overtail, stock stub, all that kind of stuff. Camaro. I think everybody had Camaros back in the day.
Sure.
It was 90. That was 94.
94, okay.
94. And we raced that 1 year. And then in 94, I believe 94 was Scott Wimmer's last year in limited late models. And got to know the Wimmers, just racing with them. And wound up buying his car from him at the end of 94. And that's when he went super late model racing.
Okay. What, when you got into like the bomber division, did you always kind of know like, hey, I'm gonna take this eventually farther than the bomber class, and I'm gonna step up as far as I can?
I think absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to be Neil Knobloch or Lyle Nowak or, all them guys. I wanted to get up there and race with them guys. I had a lot of fun in the bomber car. It's just Chucky was like I said, a good family friend, and he was retiring. So
okay,
that was his last year. It had to have been 94. Could have been 93. Might have been 93. And Chucky said, "I'm retiring. I want to sell you my car," and he did. He retired, and we bought his car from him, and that's how it started. So, I was always looking up to those people and wanting to do that in the sport. So,
speaking of like looking up to people, going back to your days when you were going to the Dixieland 250 with your family, who was your guy back then you rooted for?
It's a good question. I don't even really remember if I had a specific driver. We would always watch, the Dick Trickles because that was kind of my dad's favorite driver.
Okay.
And Rich Bickle and Carlson. I remember watching growing up, and there was just a lot of people, and even the Reffners. You guys were a huge part of racing. Throughout them years. I still tell this to people. I don't know that your grandpa got as much credit as he deserves, because man, he was. I always say this. What was it? 1975, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the year I was born. Your grandpa drove down to Grundy, Illinois, and won that first.
The Bettenhausen, right? Or
was it the Bettenhausen? No, it was the one that I won.
This is terrible.
Yeah,
I can't think of
it. Terrible.
Actually, someone was just talking to me about this here because I was telling them I'm gonna go down to Grundy in a Midwest truck, and I've never been there. Like, oh, it's a great place because your grandpa's the first ever. Wow.
Yeah. Why am I blanking it out? But yeah, you could probably look it up.
I'm gonna have to.
I just you think about that, and you're like, 1975. I mean, what were they driving for haulers back then? And
yeah.
And they're driving, when we got in my hauler in 2000s, and we're like, man, we're driving all the way to Grundy? That's on the other side of Chicago. That's a long ways to go. And your grandpa did it in 75, and that's pretty impressive. And so I just looked up something, or somebody told me the other day, I saw it on Facebook maybe, he had the track record at every racetrack in the state in one of them years or something like that.
Definitely could have been. I can't confirm that.
Yeah,
but
thought I just saw that.
But I always feel like those guys, like there'd be that portion of a year. Or that year was it was Trickle. It was setting all those track records, and as my grandpa or Marv or something like that. Yeah. Can you imagine that, being able to go set multiple track records in a year somewhere? I can't even fathom what that would be like.
Yeah, crazy. But they were also racing a lot too, back in the day. So, yeah, no, it was. So looking up to a lot of different racers. There was a lot of different racers, even from
Wayne Carter Classic.
Wayne Carter Classic.
I was not gonna end this without finding that, because we were gonna get shamed over it.
And I won that race too.
Okay.
In the ASA or the ARCA. I'm not sure if it was ASA or ARCA, but I won that race. So yeah, that was pretty cool. But to say who I looked up to the most, I don't know. I'm not really sure if I had one. I just enjoyed watching them races.
I feel like that's very similar to me. I feel like I had, my family knew this guy, or my family knew this guy, or my dad really liked this guy. So I kind of just, hey, it was this guy's day. I was like, well, I'm going to cheer for him to win. And I kind of just enjoyed watching, cheering for, I don't know, whoever I thought was a respectable driver at the time, I think.
Right. Yeah. You talk about respectable drivers. It seems like back in the day, they were all respectable to each other. There was a lot of respect. Nowadays, sometimes you watch some of these races, and I know there's controversy even on the big side of NASCAR races these days. But
yeah, the Martinsville Xfinity one, that was a hot topic. Still is
pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, there was just a lot of people growing up. A lot of people that kind of take you under the wing too as you go along. I mentioned Lyle Nowak. He helped us out a lot, and was a great competitor, and I always looked up to him as a pretty intense racer and intense, competitor. So
yeah. I remember him coming up and telling me I think he got to race with every single one of us Reffners, all four of us. I remember him coming up the day that happened. He came up and told me that was pretty cool. It's like, been around a long time.
I remember going to Golden Sands for one of my first super late model races, and when I was young, and I remember being on the racetrack, and I'm like, I even came over here, I'm like, I'm on the same racetrack as Tom Reffner. I said, this is pretty cool.
Oh, it's cool, yeah.
So I always kind of tried to recognize that, the history of the sport and stuff like that. I remember also, I don't know why it was. I think it was because of the Wimmers. We followed them. They got us to go to, I mentioned going to Columbus on Friday nights.
Yep.
And they started doing some of that stuff back in the day. So we kind of followed that path that they had. And then the Wimmers would go to the Dells on Saturday nights. So that's where my career kind of took me.
Okay.
I did not raced like CWRA a lot, back in the day. I kind of wanted to follow that path and go race the Dells on a Saturday night. And I remember first race going to the Dells, I did not make the show. I'm like, holy cow, these guys are fast, and I still bullshit with Bobby Weiss a lot, and he always looked up to him as a really good race car driver, and seeing him there first time, and Zimmerman back in the day, and all them guys racing at the Dells, they were a lot of them had a lot of respect for each other. Some of them didn't. Jeff Kendall was a really tough competitor there back in the day, and he wouldn't take no crap from no one. So, it was cool growing up through that.
When you didn't make that show, was that in a limited late or super late?
Super late.
Super late. Was that your first ever super late race?
Yeah, one of them. Not the very first, but one of them.
Do you remember your first one?
Oktoberfest.
Okay.
Yeah, Oktoberfest was the first one. That was the car I bought from Neil Knoblauch, and that was the very first one. Yep. I'm not sure. Do believe we made the show. The big Oktoberfest show. I don't even know what it was back then. If it was still the ARCA, it should have been would have been ARCA. Would have been the McCarnes thing. What was it? I'm not sure what the big show would have been there on a Sunday because that kind of changed around.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with back then.
It might have been ARCO. I think it was still ARCO back in the day.
It definitely could have been.
Yeah. I think that show, that when I said I was racing with your grandpa, was an ARCO show at Golden Sands.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I caught like the last year of ARCO, and then that Remax Challenge Series bought it out.
Okay. Yep.
The NASCAR, and they changed it to NASCAR Remax Challenge Series. Dabbled in that a little bit. Just didn't have the funding and the support that we really needed to be competitive.
Because there was a lot of funding. I remember around that because I think my family, it was a very short stint, but Paul Menard was what came in and did the NASCAR Remax, and
yeah.
Do you remember how some of those first races went in a super late model?
Not that great.
Did you have any moments where it was like, man, this is going to be tough? This is a little different.
A lot of them. And one of them was that one at the Dells that I went to, and sitting in the hauler in the infield watching the feature go by because you didn't make the show, and you're like, man, we got to step up our game here.
Yeah.
And back in the day, I always thought it was motor. Needed a big motor, but I don't know if that was always it. I think you should have cornered it a little bit better than you needed a big motor. But the things that you learn nowadays compared to what you did back in the day, if you knew these things now, then and that's where when your generations are coming up, you can help your generations along because you've learned so much over the years and helped out. But I don't remember too many of the super lates back in the day. There's been so many races though. I mean, it's just it all kind of blurs in together, I guess.
Yeah. I don't remember if I on this show have told this story at all, but I remember I recently told, actually I think where I told it was with Brandon Ashenbrenner and Kirk Keen on their radio show, was my first super late model race, and it was a good humbling experience, and I was racing for Kevin Lang, the number 88, and so at that point in my life I'd raced go-karts, 4-cylinders, super stock, and I probably never had gotten lapped in any of those, weren't that many cars, or just was very competitive and had never been lapped. And I think it was like the first ever Yellow River Racing Series race at Marshfield, and made the show. And I might have started last or second to row to last or something like that. And I don't remember if that was a 50 lap or 75. It might have been 75. And I remember it's probably 10, 15 laps to go, and spotter keys up. Hey, leader's coming. You're going to want to move over. And like, okay, whatever. Let the leader go by. And it was Mark Kraus, and Mark Kraus goes by me, and whoever was spotting me for me at the time goes, I think it might have been Kevin. Hey, try and follow in his line and learn a little bit. And all right, do that, and getting a little farther away. I'm like, man, how does he do that?
Yeah.
And goes by me, and I was just, I remember probably a couple more went by, and I'm just like, wow. I'm like, he went all the way around the track, caught me, and then just kept on going. I'm like, it's going to take a lot to do that, you know. And that was a good humbling first experience. And I mean, I never came in and had this expectation I was going to set the world on fire by any means, but it was just like, wow, these guys are good.
Yeah. No, I've been in them similar situations, you know, and you know, you think about it, some people can dominate, you know, and I had that 2010 season racing for the Kerslings, and we were really good. We were really fast. But I never had, you know, a dominating a season, you know, and I always look at Mark Eswine and Golden Sands. I mean, that guy pretty much owns that place, or did own that place back in the 2000s. So that's pretty impressive to win that many championships and win that many races and stay on top of your game for that long. So, you know, I never had really one of them seasons besides that 2010 season. So, and not really sure why. You know, was it my driving style? Was it just things didn't click? You know, whatever it was. When I started racing for Vandergeest, then we pretty much didn't do any weekly stuff and just went right into the ASA and the
touring
ARCA,
stuff,
touring stuff, and that's tough. You know, that's the competitive level up there is really tough. So it wasn't like I was okay where I was at, because I felt that I just needed to get the experience on these longer races and in the touring stuff, and it will come. And eventually it did, but it never really got to a point where, you know, I was winning every race, you know, stuff like that. I raced with, you know, Haslai and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was a great competitor. Just had some good success in some of the touring series, even with the Midwest Tour, the Wisconsin Challenge Series back in the day. Ran some really good races.
Prior to running with Kersling, when did you get your first super late model win?
That's a good question too. Well, that would have been Dells.
Okay.
1998, probably 97, somewhere in there at the Dells. Went back to the Dells probably for about 3 years in a row there every Saturday night, and then some specials here and there, whether it was a Wisconsin Challenge Series or stuff like that. And that was just racing all out of my own, you know, out of my own pocket.
Yep.
You know, and when you say your own pocket, you know, I've been at my job for 31 years now, same job. I started as a welder. Now I'm basically the plant manager, but learned a lot on the way. But I would spend every dime that I had. I mean, that's what I did.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't buy a house until I met my wife and we got married and all that kind of stuff. I just, you know, spent just about everything that I had on race cars all summer long. And do I regret that? No. You know, I think, you know, could I have done things maybe a little bit differently? Maybe. But in the long run, it didn't hurt me. You know?
I think about when I had met my wife, and she's like, well, why don't you have more money saved up? I'm like, I never thought about buying a house. Like,
no.
Who does that? I go racing.
Yeah, exactly.
At that point, I was like, well, I use my parents' house to sleep, and that's really about it.
Yeah.
I didn't need a house.
I think we're all in the same boat when it comes to that, for sure. But, yeah, no, I mentioned my job. I mean, I learned a lot there, learned a lot about people, learned a lot about patience, and have a great group of people that I work with now. Very happy with where I'm at as far as work goes, and you know, the place that I'm at has really got me to where I'm at in my life. So
that's awesome.
Very thankful for that and appreciative of that. So, yeah, teaches you a lot of things. People can teach you a lot of things, I should say. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can't beat a great place to work. And congrats on working at the same place for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen a lot of times nowadays.
It's getting, I'll say this, retirement's getting closer than not. So
yeah. Now, when did you get the opportunity with the Kersling car, and how did that come aboard?
So when I first started racing super late models at the Dells, I did meet Ed Holmes.
Okay.
And through, people like Todd Zick, he was helping Todd Zick out, and people like that. And Ed and I always just got along, I'd talk to him about, we'd probably stop at Leo's, have a few beers, and I'd talk to him about race cars all the time. I'm like, what can I do? What's this? What's that? Shocks were a big thing for him, and they always have been. And got to know him, and he's like, well, I'll sell you a set of shocks. And I said, well, I didn't know how to rebuild them. He goes, well, come down to my shop. So middle of winter, went down to his shop. And we're talking, this is probably 97, right around there. And showed me how to rebuild a set of Penske shocks. And we've really been pretty good friends since then, And that's basically, I kept in touch with him throughout, even running for myself, all them years. And then when Kerslings were looking for somebody to drive their car because Jason wanted to step back, started a family. So Al went to Ed and said, I'm looking for a driver. And Ed's like, why don't you call up Chris Weinkauf? And that's how it started. So Ed's really the one that got me in there. And I just got a phone call out of the blue one day, and I knew the Kerslings. We actually pitted next to him for years at Golden Sands, so knew Jason when he ran. I think Jason ran hobby stocks. He dominated hobby stocks back in the day, if I remember right.
And super stocks, yeah.
Or super stocks or whatever it was. And then I didn't know the Kerslings much when they got a super late, because I wasn't racing Golden Sands. I know, I think my brother was. But I think my brother actually got a ride right around that same time driving for...
he was in the 7-Eleven, right?
No, before that.
Okay.
He was in, what was it? The 36 car. That was a family... Terrace Homes.
Matternack.
Yep, Matternack.
Galen Matternack, yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So he got a ride right around that same time.
I don't remember
before
him.
that.
I don't remember him in that car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, so Ed got me in there, and Al says, come down to my shop. And he's got a shop just down the road from here, really, in Amherst Junction there.
Yeah.
And walked in, and they were just all in. They're like, whatever you need, let's do it. Let's win some races. And Al was a big competitor. He did not like to lose. I'm telling you right now, he did not like to lose. He was one of them guys that there was no smile on his face when we didn't win the race, and they were dedicated to it. And we talked about Ed when I first got to that first day, and he's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I think we should get Ed as a crew chief. And he's like, all right, I'll call up Ed. We'll get him as a crew chief. And Ed came to every race. We went and did some testing. We did, some of that stuff. We got a big hiccup right away. We went to Madison for the opener for the would have been ASA or ARCA touring race.
Okay, yep.
And during the race, I don't know if it was I think it was a wheel. Remember back in the day, the Bassett was having problems with wheels? And
nope.
They were having some problems in the early 2000s where the rims would break, the lips would break off. That's why they got double hem wheels on them now.
Okay, yeah.
And sure enough, going into turn 3, the wheel broke, and we pounded the fence, and we're like, wow, this is the first race of the year. And we're like, now what are we going to do? Well, we wound up pulling the motor out, taking it to Ed,
Yep.
fixing the stub, putting it back together, and went to the first race at State Park and won that race. And then it just started snowballing from there. Started going to Golden Sands every Friday and running really good. Woulda, shoulda, coulda, whatever. Woulda won the championship at Golden Sands that year too. We blew the motor on the second to the last race. So
I think I remember that.
Yeah. So that ended that one, and then I was running.
Were you running your own cars like Marshfield?
Yeah, I was running my own car at Marshfield. So I was running Thursday night at State Park, which wasn't every Thursday. You know, they only had them 10 races, but it seemed like it was every. And then Friday night at Golden Sands, so the 99 would race both them races. And that was tough for them, too. They like changing oil just like almost every race. So they would, after Thursday night was over, they didn't really like to party much. You know, they're like, I might have one beer with you because we won or something, but stuffed in the trailer. And they went home and they would unload the car, put it up on the hoist, drain the oil out that night yet, and put new oil in, head to Golden Sands. And we had the setups pretty much figured out what we needed for Golden Sands versus State Park, and a couple extra sets of shocks. And Ed would meet us there. And I remember everybody teased me because Ed would walk in with 4 shocks. He'd be hanging on his arm, and Ed would take the shocks home just about every night and dyno them and make sure they were prime. So we were really on top of our game, I guess you could say, you know, in that aspect as far as making sure everything was right. And then Saturday nights I'd race my own car at Marshfield. So had a lot going on that year.
Yeah, I think 2010 I would have just started getting into super late model racing when I ran for Kevin Lang, and then because Gary Kovleski was helping me that year, as well as being the crew chief for that. And then I think I was running my super stock at Golden Sands because I was running it there full time. And yeah, I remember you being very, very dominant in that 2010. And was Jason, were you two neck and neck that whole year? I feel like whenever I'd go watch a super late model race, it was Chris and Jason Weinkauf.
At Marshfield, we were neck and neck. And then like same weekend, and we blew them. It might have been the weekend before. We blew the motor up in the 99 car. Jason and I got in a big wreck at Marshfield. And I wound up on top of him, and the body was destroyed. And he was able to get his car back going. And mine, I'm just like, I was just burnt out. I'm like, you know what? It's over. I mean, I'm not trying to put this thing back together for one race. And Al's like, let's just take my 99 car over there. We'll be done with the championship at Golden Sands. You know, we'll take my car over there. You can race it. And we had went to Marshfield that summer with the 99 car and dominated the Wisconsin Challenge Series, I think it was at the time, and just blistered the field and won that race too. And it's like, we'll get him that last race. Well, then we wound up blowing the motor on the last race at Golden Sands. So I'm like, well, I guess we're going to lose 2 championships here in a matter of 2 days because of a blown motor and a wreck. Well, then Al Schifferl stepped up and let me drive the 7-Eleven car that next day. I remember we left Golden Sands and went straight over to Al's place and started working on the car. We worked on it all morning, got it going, went to the track. We did pretty good. My brother wound up passing me with like 5 to go, and he won the championship. But, you know, we gave it a valiant effort.
Yeah.
It would have been a really dominating year if A, motor went to blue, 2, wreck. But, I mean, it happens. It happens in racing all the time.
It's tough to swallow, but it happens to everyone.
Yeah.
Who ended up winning it at Plover then?
Probably Mark.
Okay.
I don't even remember. I didn't really.
It's a good guess.
I didn't really care, but most likely Mark. I think Mark won what? Somebody said he won 9 championships there or something, and
it might be like 10 or 11. I feel.
Maybe. I think I said it wrong last show too, when somebody asked me that question. It might be 10 or 11, but I think Jason beat Mark 1 year, interrupted his streak. I don't remember who else was in there, but yeah, there was only a few people in there that interrupted his streak to win the championship. So, yeah, we would have possibly been one of them, but didn't happen.
Yeah. So how long did you race for them?
Just 2 years.
Just 2 years. Okay.
Yeah. So raced for them, ran that car for Ed. Was having real good success, and then Jay Vanergy's called and said, I want you to come race for me. And he was just getting a super late model program together, I think he had Tim Sauter driving for him once in a while.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So Tim and I kind of just swapped. He went to the 99 team because he was obviously really good friends with Ed too. Growing up, Tim drove for Ed quite a bit.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. When I think Tim might have been one of the first drivers that Ed had when he kind of stepped out of the race car. And so when 99 team needed another driver, they got Tim.
Okay.
And he dominated in that car too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember State Park Speedway, he was like unbeatable there for a while. But yeah, so then I started racing for Jay. And really, Jay gave me the opportunity to go to the next level where I'm not saying that the Kerslings couldn't have, but they didn't have the funding and the want and the means to go to a touring series. And that's ultimately what I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Was move up and race in a touring series. So Jay was able to give me that opportunity to do that, and my brother as well. So that's where that started, was basically building a touring series team, and over them years building it for now Levon, building up that super late model team for him. So that's how that worked. I mean, it was.
Then did Ed came along and helped you in the Vandergeest team too as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He did for quite a few years, until we started buying Toby cars, and then we split off and went a different direction. So yeah, we raced a lot with Ed, even with the Vandergeest. He came along. It's just the distance is so far away,
Oh yeah.
and Ed would come up to 3 hours or 2 hours up the shop and try to help us. Sometimes it would be, one night a week, or, and he's trying to run his own business, and it was too much for us all with Ed. But yeah, I can't say enough about Ed Holmes and the gratitude that he's done for me and helped me out and taught me and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I've probably never thanked Ed in person enough for, because I remember being so excited when I went to race with Gary Kovleski and his team that he was putting together, because you were, that was where I knew, the Holmes left-hander from, was you running that 99 car. And then I think the next year, that's when it would have been 2011, you went to race with Vandergeest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I think you guys were building 2 new cars. Ed talked Gary into not just restubbing an older car that he bought, got him to build a new one, and I'm like,
yeah,
I'm gonna have an Ed Holmes left-hander too. And I'm like, I just got done watching Chris Weinkauf dominate one of those for the last couple of years. I'm like, this is gonna be the cat's ass.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny when I can't remember what I don't know if it was when you were saying that brand new, did you say when Ed built that 21 brand new, and you think you went out and set fast time with it?
Yeah.
And we did the same thing in Gary's 44 car, brand new car, went to Golden Sands. And I think we turned, I don't know if I could be very wrong, but we went out and turned like an 11.8 at Plover, and I'm like, wow. And then I never touched that ever again.
Yeah,
but
right.
Man, that was that, and it's like, man, that was one of the coulest things ever. It was like, and this is going to be good from here.
Yeah,
and it was great.
Yep. No, Ed's great. It just again, I think why it broke up a little bit was just the distance, and Ed's trying to run his business, and he taught me so much I could kind of do it on my own type of thing, So he was that mentor that taught me so much that I just tried doing it on my own. Then after that, and then we got hooked up with Toby and started running Toby cars. So don't really bounce a lot off of Ed these days, but still remain as close as friends as I can to him, and always chit chat about some racing back in the day whenever I can with him. But just you meet so many people in racing. That's why I always say racing is pretty cool. I know a lot of other sports, I'm sure you get to meet a lot of people too, but I've met so many people and so many friends through racing, and Ed's one of them special guys that you meet.
Yeah, I think the same thing as well, and it could be just as well for me that I'm partial to racing versus other sports. But yeah, I think just the support you get, you end up getting from people, whether it's just help or something financially or just some opportunity and, results to success, and that, there's a lot on the line when, all these people are coming together to help you. And I think it makes that bond and kind of come together a little closer than, maybe seeing other things. And obviously I've never been too high up in any other sport level. So
right.
I'm speaking from my experiences and my experiences alone, but I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of mentors in my life. Another big one was my Uncle Dan. And I'm sure you remember my Uncle Dan. He used to.
Yeah, I do.
He used to help Joe Krakowski out back in the day in '77.
Okay.
And then when he quit working for Joe, then he come and helped us. And he's a big motorhead, gearhead with my dad, and taught us a lot about race cars and a lot about roll centers and all the different things. And he was very hands on. We cut and welded a lot of things on race cars over the years, to try to make them better. And he was a big part of that. And we'd spend nights in the shop and during the winter and weekends and putting new shock mounts on. And back in the day, it was higher hoops and all that kind of stuff. And the big sway bars and soft springs and shocks. My Uncle Dan rebuilt so many shocks for me. And did all that kind of stuff. So, he was a big mentor and a big help for me, along with my dad. My dad's support was just kind of crazy how much he supported us kids throughout our racing career. So, Dad kind of stepped back a little bit now. He's got a lot of great grandbabies, and he's retired now. And him and Mom just do their own thing. He's spending a lot of time with Mom, where he spent a lot of time at the racetrack and not with Mom. It got to be the point where my mom didn't go to the racetrack much in the later years, because it was like, it was grueling. We'd race so much. It wasn't like you just raced one night a week. You're racing 3 nights a week. It's like, and somebody's got to take care of the home,
Right.
So, but.
Yeah, and it was two of you,
Mm-hmm.
racing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my dad kind of worked on Jason's car, and my Uncle Dan kind of worked on my car when we got to the racetrack.
Okay.
It was just kind of, instead of everybody working on everything, Dad kind of crew chief Jason, Uncle Dan kind of crew chief me, if you want to put it that way, for a long time.
What was it like racing with a brother?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Especially when, you guys are running at the top of a points championship battle with each other. I mean, it's.
Mm-hmm. I think you gain more respect, for people when you do it that way.
And would you have been working out of the same shop at the time too and everything?
Yeah, we worked out of my mom and dad's garage for a lot of years until I built a shop by my house, and we still work out of that one. We have been working out of Vandergeest for these last bunch of years, 10 or so years that we've been doing it. But I always kind of still had a car at my shop. I didn't work on it as much, Now I got my own car there, and I bought a Legend car and Oliver's.
For you to drive?
Yeah, I raced it last year twice.
I saw that. I didn't know it was yours though. Okay.
Yeah. I got it for a bottle of Windsor. it sat in a guy's shop for 10 years. He didn't even race it up in Merrill. I was friends with his son. I'm kind of getting off tangent here a little bit, but he's like,
"That's fine.
You wanna race Legend cars?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's get it." And I had my buddy's kids come over and help me a little bit, and they're like, "Yeah, let's get this Legend car." So I'm like, "All right." So we went up and got it, and everything's rusted on it. Everything, brakes are rusted. The pads are shot. Everything is just, it needed a full rebuild. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go through all this. Well, wound up buying all new brakes for it and tearing the rear end out and fixing all it. And we went to Wausau and had some fun with it. So, and then I went to Marshfield and blew it up. So, yeah.
What was it like driving a Legend car?
I tell you what,
Because it had been the smallest thing you ever raced then.
Yeah. At Wausau, they're a handful. I mean, they're short wheelbase, so they're all over the place. And then you're hitting all them bumps at Wausau, and they're just jerking you all over the place. So it was like I was worn out after I raced that thing. Of course, you can get worn out racing a super late model at Wausau too. So, yeah, it was fun at Marshfield, nice and smooth and big. And some people say maybe they shouldn't be at Marshfield because they're pretty fast, but I think they're fine. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I tore it, of course, typical race car style. I tore it completely down to nothing now, and it's bare chassis, and gonna get it all sandblasted and powder coated and all that kind of stuff. So,
you're all in.
Yeah, now I'm all in. but I'm not. I shouldn't say I'm all in. You know, everybody wants me to buy one of them Z09 motors, the liquid cooled motors and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not spending that kind of money. I'm just out here to have some fun, and I kind of wouldn't care if anybody wanted to drive it. You know, if maybe you would want to get in the seat of a legend car once. I'd be like, hey, Colin, come down, drive it, or come and get it. Do whatever you want to do. You know, it kind of. I got some friends of mine that have never raced and but would want to. I'm like, you want to take the legend car out? I don't care. You know, so
kind of Weinkauf and Company race team.
Yeah, kind of got that a little bit. So, and then you bring that up. Or you do say that it kind of might be a little bit of a direction that I would go in the future is maybe have some cars for people either to rent or to do whatever. Matter of fact, I was just working on your truck yesterday.
Were you really?
Yeah.
You got it tuned up for me?
Yeah, she's all tuned up. Well, I think they're tuning it up today, but
okay.
But I went up there and helped Paul. Paul's been a great guy for me for years. He traveled with me to all them tour races. We're running for Vanities for years and years and years. So he called me up and he's like, "Hey, you got any time?" I'm like, "Yeah, I come up there." So yeah, we worked on your truck. Probably more. Yours is pretty much done. So we were working on the other one a little bit. So.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think all they had to do was tune yours up a little bit. So
yeah, the icebreaker comes quick, and I was like, man, this April 12th race is coming fast. I was like, no wonder why I only ran it once.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I got some buddies that say that you shouldn't race before Memorial Day and after Labor Day, but that ain't the case around here.
No, that's condensed a little too far.
Yeah.
We try and make it work up here.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's it like growing up running Wausau a bunch and seeing it kind of come to a close, and then rumors spiraling all over about what a future could be or might be or won't be?
Yeah, it's actually pretty sad, honestly. I was there. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to get the legend car done last year, because I was racing there the last season with my super late, and I just wanted to do it. I haven't raced a full season at Wausau in a very long time, and I'm like, last year I decided I'm just going to race Wausau. That's all I'm going to do for the final season. Well, it wound up breaking a ball joint and hitting the wall with like one race to go. So the stub was bent, and I'm like, well, I'm not going through all this work for one car. And I had that legend car sitting there, and that Phil was having that last hurrah, that 55-lap legend car race. And I'm like, I'm going to put that legend car together and go to that last race. And we went. I think I went the Thursday before and ran okay, like qualified mid-pack, something like that. Well, then I went for that big race, and there was a lot of legend cars there, because that was, 15,000 a win or something like that. I don't remember what it was.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah, it was something outrageous. Maybe it wasn't that much. Maybe that was the purse. I don't know, but it was like a lot of money. So there was a lot of legend cars there. It was on a Saturday afternoon. And I qualified again, mid-pack. Had to come through the qualifier. Ran the first qualifier, and then I think I ran the last chance race. And I got second in the qualifier, or the last chance, whatever you want to call it. And I made the big show. I'm like, well, this is cool. I made the big show. Well, I went to Tech, and yeah, typical racer style, I was running right to the limit on my ride heights, and I got out of the car in Tech, and I picked up on the bumper a little bit, and the Tech official looked at me and goes, "You're done. Thanks for coming." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You can't lift up on the car." And I said, "Well, I didn't know that." He goes, "Well, you should read the rules then." I'm like, "Well, oh, fine. You guys are pretty strict." So, yeah, I wound up not making the race.
Did they even measure it?
No. he had the tool in his hand. He threw it on the ground. He goes, "Thanks for coming." He goes, "You can't pick up on the race car." I'm like, "Huh, I did not know it was that strict. Now I do."
Now I do. Wow.
My crew guys are standing there going, "What just happened?" I'm like, "Well, we got disqualified. We're done."
Wow.
Yeah, he was pretty intense. So,
Get a legend car, don't mess around.
Yep. Don't pick up on a legend car when you get out after or when you roll in the tech. Did not know that.
Just stretching my foot.
I have heard people doing that though, and Tim Brockhouse, I was pitting next to him, and he's a really cool dude. I don't know if you ever get to meet Tim Brockhouse, but he owns Great North Legends in Minnesota.
Okay.
And they come over here, and they're usually the ones that pull in the Golden Sands with that big hauler, and 20 freaking legend cars come out of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, he's parked next to us all the time at Wausau, and he's a really cool dude, and he's like, "Yeah, you don't do that." He said, "You get out with your back on the, put your feet down, and you push your back up on the roll bar as you're getting out." And I'm like, "Well, you could have told me that before I picked up on the bumper." So, yeah, that was
lessons learned.
But, it was special to be there for that last race. It was just, we were able to take the walk around the track and do all that with Phil and just known Phil and Helen for my whole career. They've been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
Since I started when I was 15 years old, and it's just it was pretty special to be there for them. Mark Martin was there.
Yeah.
Got to see Mark Martin. He came up to the car. We bullshitted a little bit, and I told him this was my 31st year of racing. And he goes, "What? Did you start when you had diapers on or what?" So, yeah, it was pretty cool. But I've always kind of been a Mark Martin fan, always liked his racing, and it was cool to see him up there. So
it's neat. He's such a good supporter of Wisconsin racing. I'm a big supporter and fan, I think.
Mm-hmm. Just, yeah, I mean, it's going to be sad that a racetrack that I started racing at in my whole career and 20 minutes from my house and it's ending. So wish somebody could get in there and maybe take it over, but it's probably not the case. It's just not.
Well, I seen you joking on Facebook after Slinger got purchased that maybe you and Wendy would buy it.
I did say that. I don't know if that's a good idea, though, that we own a racetrack. At least Wendy probably wouldn't think it's a good idea, but yeah, I would think it'd be cool, to own a racetrack. Whether I don't have the funds to own something like that, but it'd be cool just to there's a lot of memories and there's a lot of history that goes on in that place, and you start thinking about the racetracks and who owns them around the state nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of ex-race car drivers.
Yeah.
I think maybe back in the day, maybe it was businessmen, but now, with Dasso's buying Slinger and Cody owning State Park and, the Wimmers obviously with a racing family, but it's just, you're seeing people just jump in and buy them and keeping it alive. I've always thought maybe more racers like Wimmer would step up and buy some. You hear Kevin Harvick bought a racetrack in California, his hometown racetrack, and and obviously the Wimmers did, but you'd hope that maybe a Ken Seth would come up and buy a racetrack if needed and stuff like that, but maybe that's just not in their cards or not in their.
Yeah, they probably understand the headaches and but I still hear you. I kind of wish for some of those same things, but yeah, I pictured myself and I was driving past when and through the times when Rockford was shutting down that period and of course getting tore up, and then now State Park getting closed, and I drove past Golden Sands and I'm like, I wonder what I just pictured myself if that place wasn't there. I'm like, I don't even want to think about that. And I'm like, so for a lot of people like yourself that grew up running there, I'm like, of course I didn't grow up racing there really, but it's tough, and we want to see racing evolve and grow and flourish and improve, and it's tough when things like that happen. But
State Park was getting, they brought them bandoleros in there. So they were getting a lot of young kids involved in the sport.
Yes.
And it's sad that them young kids aren't going to be able to grow up and race at that track. I think that's what one thing that means the most to me. My nephew Oliver's coming up, and just the beaming of him wanting to race, because he's been at the racetrack since he was a toddler with his mom and dad, and his uncle, and bringing him up and putting him in a bandolero. And remember going there the first day and him testing, and I mean, it's just like now he's not going to be able to experience that in a big car,
Yeah.
Speaking of going to State Park as a toddler, I was there for when Levon went in his first race as a bandolero there too.
Okay.
So it was kind of cool to see Levon go there and Oliver go there, basically in the same car, because Jason bought all Levon's old stuff. So it was it's cool to see all them guys grow up and run that. So,
and speaking of Levon, you really, seemed like for the last several years really took on a role of helping him. What's that been like? Obviously you've still been racing, but slowed down your side and really got involved with everything he was doing.
It was an awesome experience. I mean, I wouldn't trade it at all. It was great to grow up with Levon. I don't know how old he was when we first started racing for Jay, but not that old. And I should point out, I knew Jay before that. I knew Jay from when he started racing, and his shop is not very far from mine, so I'd stop over. I mean, I knew Levon since he was born, really.
Okay.
That was part of the whole big plan with Jay and his team, was to build it up and have us be, mentors for Levon. Am I probably the best mentor? Probably not. I'm not. I mentioned work, and I think over the years I've learned how to be more patient and try to be calmer and try to. I'm kind of a mentor at work in that aspect too, so that all helped me out be better, with that. And it was a good challenge, and it was fun to grow up and watch Levon do that. I didn't help much on the bandolero when it came to Levon. Actually, my Uncle Dan did a lot of work with Levon and mentoring him with the bandolero when he first started, because I was racing my own stuff big time in the touring division at that time.
Yeah.
Jay was racing, Jason was racing. We had 4 race cars in the shop, and we're all trying to keep them running and going to all these races and be competitive. And not until really Levon got in the truck series is where then Dan helped a little bit with that, but then kind of took over the role of basically being his crew chief and mentor at that point. And Jason both of us kind of did that. But teaching, trying to teach him how to work on them as well as at the racetrack and being a driver coach and stuff like that with the experience that we have. I'm not the greatest driver coach. I found that out. I think I'm better. I'm a better mechanic than I am a driver coach, and I've realized that, which is a little bit of a downfall that I have, because I had a hard time explaining to him, characteristics of a racetrack and what the changes they're going to do and all that kind of stuff, and when the changes are going to happen. So he's had to grow up a little bit, learn that on his own. He's getting some advice from his dad and my brother and other guys. But it was a really cool experience to be with him and mentor him and be that mechanic for him and help him. And then even, into the super late division too. So,
yeah, I mean, you guys had a lot of, I think, good success, and really, really stood out. So,
yeah, he's been, the truck series was great. Won the championship in there, won a bunch of races in that. Stepped up to the super late models. They're tougher,
Yeah.
I mean, they are tougher. And Levon didn't really go into super late model racing on a weekly basis. He kind of jumped head first right into the touring stuff, So there is a learning period there somewhere, and I think he's gotten to over that point, and now I think he's going to be pretty good. I've got him. I shouldn't say I've got him, and I don't want to put it that way, but he's gotten to the point where he's making a lot of decisions on his own, making a lot of calls on his own, and kind of taking over his own program. So that's neat to see too.
Yeah.
And it's going to allow me to maybe step away from that a little bit and go back to working on myself, working with Oliver, spending more time with my wife. The last several years have been grueling for us all. That quickie development program was tough on everybody, trying to keep everything rolling, for the last 2 years, because he was in that for 2 years in a row. So
okay, yep,
that was a lot of work to keep that whole thing moving. So now that's gone, that's over, and he can focus on just trying to have some fun, winning some races, and going after some goals, whether it be championships or just winning races. And the period that we've had has got him to the point where he can do that on his own, and get some of his own buddies in there working on race cars, and just wrapping his arms around his race team. And I'm going to step back a little bit and try to do my own thing. So, yeah.
Awesome. That's cool. That's cool. It's cool for you and cool for Levon, and to hear and see that. And talking about your wife, how'd you meet her?
I met her probably at a bar. Yeah, she had no idea.
A great start to a country song.
She had no idea what racing was.
Okay,
not a clue. It's kind of weird. We all have a big group of friends that we're all still together from high school type of thing. And her best friend is, one of her best friends we're all friends together. The guys were friends, the girls were friends, we're all kind of still friends. And she was actually married once before and lost her husband to cancer. Okay. And I was full-blown racing. I mean, I didn't even spend a lot of time with my high school buddies because I was just so into racing that it consumed my whole life. And I just hung out with a friend of mine finally from school, and we just kind of hit it off, and hey, want to go on a date? And that's how that kind of started. So, and then she got head over into racing too at that point. And so then I'm like, well, I guess this is what we're doing. We're not slowing down on this. So she just loved it, and her parents loved it, and followed us around, and we just started doing a lot more racing.
Yeah, it always works so cool when everyone can be involved and be a part of it, for sure.
Yeah, her mom and dad had a boat and a cottage up north, and they sold all that and got a motorhome and just started coming around and watching the races. So it was some good times. Yeah,
that's neat. Yeah, I don't like to pass over bringing up the wives, because I know it takes a lot of support for guys to keep racing, especially if they're married, and that's cool. They're
very important to a man's career in racing, or a woman's career, however you want to put it. But it's grueling, Especially, we didn't have kids. I can't imagine how it is with having kids and trying to take care of them, and even when they're toddlers and young and growing up. So, yeah, it's cool to see that the family in racing and how that all goes together.
Yeah, it's neat. My wife has trucked them along and gotten puked on during my feature races, and God bless her for bringing them over. And one kid might get sick in the morning, and I think they look good by the afternoon. We'll take them, and then the next one gets sick. And
I didn't realize that your wife was from a racing family. You brought that up, and that's cool.
Yeah, like I said, her maiden name is Muskusky, and when she said, I had my grandpa when I met her, she said my grandpa, my uncle had raced, and it's like, oh, okay, like Muskusky, don't remember any Muskuskis that ever raced. And
Yeah.
this might have been a 4-cylinder or something. I don't remember back in the day. And she goes, well, no, my mom's side of the family is Byer. Like, my grandpa's Ron Byer, my uncle Scott Byer. I'm like, oh, no kidding. I'm like, well, I know those names. And so, yeah, it was a little bit bigger deal than I thought. So, yeah, it was pretty neat. And I think she's got a lead foot on the street a little bit. So I think racing is in her blood. But no, her and I have been together for, I don't know, 10 or 11 years. And, since 2014. So, yeah, however that comes out to be. And, it definitely takes a lot of support and it's being very fortunate to keep doing it and just obviously having a partner, someone else involved, and then you stick kids in the mix too. You see a lot of people end or stop their racing careers for a lot of different reasons. I've been very fortunate to keep mine going.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I again been fortunate. I mentioned the Vandergeest too, and they gave me a big opportunity to be able to race in that touring series. So I'm very much appreciative to what they've done for me for the past several years, and being part of that team and watching that whole thing grow. Now it's another generation coming up with my nephew Oliver racing. I mentioned that, so I'm assuming he'll want to get into a big car someday as well. I think he looks up to Levon too, so he sees Levon started in the Bandoleros and then he went to the truck series and I think that's the same path that Oliver would like to see or would like to go in. I told him he should get in that legend car this year and give that a try so he can figure out the shifting and stuff like that. And I got I guess people call them pro late models nowadays, but I got a new one of them in the shop and I said, Oliver, you should jump in that thing too. And he goes, I don't know if I'm ready for that. He's only 12, I get it. But, I mean, you see these young kids going around and racing at 12, 13 years old in these big cars nowadays. Yeah. So it's kind of crazy how young these guys are when they're getting started. So, yeah.
Yeah, and, I think I jumped in a super late model when I was 16. And, I felt young at that point, and then, and I've seen kids be relatively successful at 14 years old, and it's like, man, it's a young age to get in a very expensive piece of equipment and to go run against a lot of other people that have very expensive equipment and be responsible with it. And actually, speaking of me getting into a super late model, I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but it came back fresh in my mind when I was thinking about you coming here. And I could be remembering this a little bit wrong, but I remember I had won the championship in the super stocks at Marshfield. It would have been 2009. Mm-hmm. And I remember walking out to the parking lot during the banquet, and your dad was walking out at the same time. And your dad says to me, he goes, I don't remember how it exactly started, but he said, we're ready for you, Colin. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, there's a lot of really, young kids that, come up and, this or that. And he's like, you're ready. We're ready for you. And I'm like, hey, thanks. And, I don't remember, like I said, I don't remember all the details of it, but I never told anybody that. And I've remembered that forever. Mm-hmm. And I just remember thinking that was really cool. And that is actually something that meant a lot to me. I think back then and at a young age really stuck out to me. So that's pretty cool. I wanted to make sure I told you that.
My dad always watched other race car drivers and knows, he's done that his whole life. He's watched as a kid, went to State Park, went to, State Fair back in the day and Minnesota State Fair for ASA races and always recognized talent and seeing the guys come up and he's always appreciated that for sure.
Yeah. Like I said, I thought that was just so cool, mm-hmm. and that memory came back, and I was like, oh, I got to definitely bring that one up.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned already a lot of really stand out accomplishments in your racing career, but is there any accomplishment that I haven't mentioned that really just stands out? Like, hey, this was a favorite race or a favorite win of mine.
I mentioned that Grundy race was pretty cool. The
Wayne Carter Classic.
The Wayne Carter Classic. Yep. That was a cool race. And then I mentioned that about your grandfather for to be in that same category is cool, and all the people that have won races like that, big races. But there's a lot. I mean, there's quite a few races. I didn't win a ton of races. I don't even have a count. You know, I don't know how many that I've actually won in my career. Kind of cherished a lot of them. I really think that the Dick Trickle race at La Crosse was probably the biggest one that I've won. Had some good success at Marshfield, like you talked about over the years, and you know, even in some of the Golden Sands days. I mean, really had some good races at Golden Sands. I think we won the Memorial Day race like 3 years in a row there, something like that, in a couple different race cars. So just really had a dominant time there. Just a lot of different races, you know, even in my own stuff, you know, on my own, I appreciate more probably than anything, just to know that I did it on my own and was able to beat some of the best racers out there. So just not really one that really sticks out, you know, and just really proud of the Dick Trickle race and being up there and him being there when it, you know, speaking of Dick Trickle, I had him sign my trailer inside my trailer.
Okay.
Long time ago, probably 2010, and put a little frame around it, and we've painted a trailer since, but you can't, there's a picture frame around it, and it's still there.
Oh, that's cool.
It's just pretty cool to have.
Yeah.
Thinking about selling the trailer, maybe somebody will keep it and appreciate that.
Man, that's a good idea. I had the trailer that I have pulled his last super late model in his last ASA car, and then I actually raced out of it in 2010. I'm like,
okay,
God, I should have had him sign the wall. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
But it actually was, people would probably be mad at me for about this, but yeah, the trailer had the big, on the back, or on the sides had, so when he came back and ran ASA, I don't know if that was 2001, 2002 time frame-ish around there. It could have been 2003, 2004. But his number was, what did they do? 43. And then they did their thing was from a knight to a king, and then they had like the logo made, and then the 99 and a 43 on there. Well, that was on the side of the trailer, and I had left it on there for a while, and then I eventually ended up taking it off, and I was like, well, I got to put an 87 on there, so I took it off. But oh well.
You don't think about that stuff until it's actually over or gone, or how what it actually means. What the meaning of some of that stuff is, but and
actually thinking about it, I think I bought I don't remember if I bought the trailer after he had passed anyway, so I wouldn't have had that opportunity. But that's cool that you got your trailer. That's neat.
Yeah. Hopefully, if I do sell it, hopefully somebody else realizes what that means and the meaning behind it.
Have a contract and a little contingency on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, having been in super late model racing as long as you haven't been involved in racing as long as you have, what do you think about where short track racing is? I guess whether it's locally or across the nation, and just in how things have evolved and where they have gotten to be. And the real direct question should really be, do you think there's anything that if you could make a change to something, what would you change? That being a rule book or at the racetrack itself and the way a racetrack goes about something.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know if there's anything that I would really change. I think times are just changing, and things are getting more expensive, and it's tough to compete with some teams nowadays, especially on the bigger, like you want to talk about the touring series level. They're almost turning into full-blown NASCAR teams running them things. You look, there was just a race, I think, last night, and I think they only had 20 cars there, which I would think in a big touring series, national touring series, you would hope there would have been more. And you just got to wonder as to why that's happening. Mm-hmm. Is it the expense? Is it people don't feel that they can compete with the big teams? Where is that at? And I know just from my experience with our race teams over the last several years, going to a big touring series event like that is very, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what is really hurting the car counts when it comes to that kind of stuff. I feel that the super late models around here, you got the smaller touring series, maybe not the national touring series. Them are still fairly affordable to go to. Probably not for the average Joe Blow, but somebody that's got a pretty decent sponsor or somebody behind them can go to them fairly easily.
Yeah.
There's series at tracks that seem to pay pretty decent and that are not days of practicing and tires and all that kind of stuff. They're just one-day shows, and I think those are fairly affordable for people to go to. But you've heard me say affordable. I think it's all about the money nowadays, that how much expense it is to run these things and cost of motors and things like that. I mean, they're just, some of that stuff is getting pretty outrageous.
Yeah, and you've seen the spec motors. Wagner has their spec motors that they've introduced to keep prices down and things like that. And it's hard to slow some of that stuff down though.
No, I don't think you ever are going to slow it down. And do you want to? I don't think you want to slow it down. You want to see things evolve and get better, and I don't think that you can stop any of that happening. But I feel that the super late model rule book has been pretty good and stayed pretty consistent for the last several years. You hear some people, I'll just say it for lack of better terms, grumble about how many different engine there are for a super late model. But like you said, there are packages out there that are fairly, I don't want to say inexpensive, but at least on a level or playing ground,
right?
Playing field. So, but yeah, it's pretty crazy how much money a guy can spend on shocks and and just things like that.
Just different setup tools, and I think that's where a lot of things to me I have seen so much evolve is just the different things to use in setups, whether it's at the track or in the shop. Just
you're not wrong, because back in the day you'd buy a set of scales and a camber gauge. Yep. Basically all you needed to set up a car, maybe a bump steer gauge, And nowadays there's shock machines and load sticks and all these things, and that's the evolution in it. It must not bother too many people because a lot of people buy them.
Yeah, we all got them.
Yeah, we all got them. We all got load machines and sticks and all these trick tools and all this kind of stuff. So, it must not slow too many people down. But I mean, them are all the things that you need though to be competitive in this day and age.
Yeah, for sure.
And to help you take some time out of working on race cars too. I mean, with the technology, with the load machines and the sticks and all this kind of stuff, it's cutting your setup time almost in half.
Yeah, it takes a lot of guesswork out of things for sure.
Yeah. You can dang near not even have to scale a race car, and you can go to the racetrack and know, especially if you've been there before and you have numbers. Well, as long as you're if you're let it up right, you shouldn't even really have to scale the dang thing. You almost know where you're at. So that's kind of where we're at on our program. So, yeah.
Oh no, yeah, I appreciate that answer. I like asking that question to guys that have been around and seen a lot, and I respect them. And yeah, it's just interesting I think sometimes people don't hear enough of what do people think about the way things have trended and where they've come and where they're at now.
You hear people talk about it, I think I just saw something on social media here recently. What is the limited late model, the pro late or whatever, or is there more of those because people can't afford the super late models, And it seems like there might be a little bit of that tending, in that direction as of late.
Yeah.
But those things you can spend a lot of money on too. There is ways that you can you can do it without spending a lot of money on those, but there's people that are finding ways to spend money on a pro late model for sure.
Yeah, I think, and then that's one of the things I kind of have, always gone back to as well as, it doesn't matter if you're running a legend car or whatever, there's going to be someone that's got money and got those things that you wish you had. And and that's where the kind of the beauty in racing stands out is you just put your mind to work and make do with what you got and go beat them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, everything, you just think about, you mentioned legend cars. Well, Bandoleros, you wouldn't think that so much goes in a Bandolero to make it as fast as possible either. But now you're putting bearing spacers in it, and you're doing all that kind of stuff. Same thing that you're doing to a super late, really. And yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So you're telling me not to buy a Bandolero for any of my kids, is what you're telling me.
Oh no, you should buy one.
Don't say that.
Hopefully, they're not listening to this. I'm sure they'll want to race someday.
Yeah, hopefully that. I'll keep them involved in enough other things just to delay that question for a while. Yeah. One of my big mistakes. I was just laughing about it with Scott Jaschelski actually the other day because he was telling me, I've really got myself in trouble with my little guy in the race shop, and we were at, I don't know if it was Oktoberfest or no, it was at Golden Sands, and he wanted to sit in the car like during the middle of the race day, and he sat in there, and I was just like, hey, you want to fire it up? And so I flipped the ignition and let him hit the on switch, and boom, boom. Oh, that's cool. And I'm like, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, right.
I shouldn't have done that. But oh well.
Yeah, that's how it goes. I mean, they grow up around that stuff, and they just get that bug, I guess, that everybody says. I mean, you're from a deep racing family, so
yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine that's what you didn't think about when you were them age too, from then on.
Yeah, I mean, really, since I can really start remembering life, my uncle would have been in the truck series at that point. Really, when I was probably 5 years old. He was, I think he was in the truck series, and I was 2 or 3 years old. So, you grow up watching an uncle, doing something. It's like, yeah, that's what I want to do, and so.
Yeah, it's just
away you go.
It's been an interesting ride for a lot of different people, and this state has had so many different racing families come from it too. I mean, it's just been a lot of families, a lot of racetracks. I talked to Dan Fredrickson a lot, and he's and he's like, you guys don't know how good you have it over here with all the racetracks that we have. So and he's right. They only have one left over Minnesota, so we got quite a few of them. Yeah, some of them are going away, but there's still a lot of them around. So.
Yeah, you got to be grateful to the ones that are operating as well as they are. That is for sure. Yeah.
How many racetracks have you gotten to around the state?
I never raced at Columbus. I have never raced at Slinger. Trying to think. Yeah, I mean, really the most notable ones. I think I've raced at all of them. I've been to Milwaukee Mile once. I was really glad to get there when I did. And then...
You ever been to Toma?
Nope.
I've never been to Toma.
Nope. Yeah, I've never been to Toma.
I think that's the only racetrack that I've never been at. I've never even seen a race there. I don't believe my brothers raced there either, but they went there with the Bandoleros last year a couple times. So Oliver's raced on that one. So he's got that one checked off. So if he can get to a few more, then he'll probably beat his dad and his uncle on how many racetracks that he's raced at. So
you throw some recaps on that late model you got in your garage now, and there you go.
I heard they're having a race over there, but I've always told that it's pretty tight. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Is there any tracks that you wish you could have gotten to that you have not yet?
I wish I would have gone to Gateway.
Gateway?
Yeah. My brother went to Gateway. He said it was pretty crazy.
What is that? Is that a mile and a quarter, or is that under a mile?
Might be a 7/8 maybe.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. Okay.
Yeah, he said it was pretty crazy. I skipped that. There was a tour race there that my brother went to, and I skipped that to go to Jason Schuler's wedding. So
okay.
Yeah.
Did you race at Iowa?
I did. I was going to bring that up too. That was my next thing I
man.
was going to bring up.
I got to help I helped my uncle there, and I got the spot. And I'm by no means any phenomenal spotter, but I got to fill in and spot for that race. And man, I was like, man, I hope I get to come here someday. And then, they never. I think that would have been the last year they went back actually. And man, that was cool. That was a cool track.
I finished third in that last race. It was just crazy, and it's just how you were wide open, perp the throttle, and then right back to wide open again. It was just nuts. I mean.
And you can run that place top to bottom pretty much, couldn't you? Yeah.
Yep. Now I qualified okay. I think maybe even in the top 5 and finishing in the top 5. But I know some people were toying with never lifting in qualifying at all, and I couldn't do it. I mean, I did just a little bit, just to probably more of a just so I feel better,
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, that was probably the most intense racetrack I was ever at. Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I remember being thrown into spotting there, and I honestly probably at that point I'd probably spotted maybe like 5 times prior to that, and then you go there and you're up on top, and that was awesome because the Nationwide at the time was racing there as well, so all the Nationwide Xfinity spotters, whatever you want to call them, were up top. But I remember, my uncle would come in, and he'd be at the bottom, and then there'd be someone up at the top groove, and they're coming at you out of the corner. It was like, you clear by 2. I don't know, and so that was different. That was very, very different, and I had to catch on quick to that.
Yeah, we went there. We went there twice, I believe, and both times I was pretty successful at it. And I always made me wonder. So I was pretty good at that racetrack. I wonder how I would be at a bigger level at an intermediate track or something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously never got to experience that. Probably never will. I'm okay with it. Would have been cool maybe to drive in a NASCAR, series once or something in my life.
Yeah.
I was teasing with some guys at the shop the other day. I'm like, I should just sell the super late and buy an ARCA car and just go to Daytona and race. I'm like, you see people all over the place do it. I mean, they've been doing it for years. I'm like,
yeah,
why can't you? I mean, it'd been really no different than buying a super late model and just going on. I can't imagine it costs you much more money. Will you be competitive? Probably not, but at least to say you could do it.
Yeah, it'd be a good experience. Yeah, and to build one too would be pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could find them all over. I do watch some people on social media that do that, run some of them ARCA cars and some of them races, and they're basically field fillers. But I mean, at least they're out there doing it,
Yeah.
But yeah, it would have been cool to be able to do that. Obviously, I didn't get that opportunity in my career. I wouldn't change any of it. I think it was what I did was just had a lot of fun, Kind of wish I would have been maybe not so serious on my race car as I was when I got to the racetrack and mingled a little bit more. I don't know if that makes sense.
I know what you mean. I wish I could say the same about myself sometimes.
You see some of these younger guys nowadays coming into sport, and they're all going around having buddies. And I think a lot of it has stemmed from bandoleros. Like, all them kids just hang out with each other, just racing all the time, and they kind of grow up and do that as they're growing up and moving up into different series. And for some reason, me growing up, I got the racetrack, and I'm like, I'm laser focused on my race car and what I'm doing and trying to make it faster. I'm not there to go bullshit with somebody but I would do it after the races at the bar. Stop at Club Forest and bullshit with anybody after that. So it's just not that I didn't have fun, still had a lot of fun. And, I mentioned it before, the people I meet. I've met some of my best friends just through racing and we go up to Crandon every year on a big snowmobile ride. We call it the Carnage Cruise. I don't know if you ever heard about it.
I think I have, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's there's a lot of racers that go up there for that, and you get to meet, even now there's Brad Miller kind of takes care of it, and now he brings dirt racers up there, and you meet dirt racers, and you get involved in some of that. And I met one of my best friends up there as a sponsor, Breeder Music.
Okay.
Bart, I met him up at the Carnage Cruise, and we've been like best friends ever since. Our families do things together. We go on vacations together. He sponsored my car for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And probably longer than that, actually. But, it's crazy all the people that you meet and the relationships that you make. And I always think, if I wasn't racing, what would I be doing? What would I have done all these years if I wasn't racing? Would I, hanging out just in town or what would I do? I don't know. I always kind of thought maybe I'd own a business, if I wasn't racing.
Sure.
And doing something like that. Because I always think about that, what else could I do in my life besides the place that I'm at,
Yeah, I mean, I think some of those things, those, traits of being that dedicated to racing, and then you see, someone with a business, I mean, all the time, effort, hours, and, giving whatever you got to put into it, I mean, and makes a lot of sense.
I do got some friends that, and I'm sure you do too, they're like, why did you spend all your money on racing like that? I'm sure you got a few of them.
Yeah. But, yeah, like you said.
You know what you could have had if you didn't spend all that money on racing?
Yeah. I'd have had a lot less fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I got more stories to tell than them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, again, back to the people that you meet, I see the people that you've even had on your show, Father Gruba has just been an amazing mentor for a lot of race car drivers.
Oh, yeah.
And, I had the opportunity to go to, his church a few times and even like his I should know this, but like his 50th Mass or his 100th Mass or whatever it was a few years ago, went and seen that. And it's neat. I'd seen you had Jerry Guiley on here. You think about Rockford Speedway and Jerry Guiley, that's pretty neat to have on here. Yeah. Pat, you had Pat here recently?
Yeah, he was the most recent episode. Yeah. That was funny. And I got to know Pat. I was friends with his grandson Isaiah, and I haven't talked to him in a while, but was close with him, and so I got to go and I'd hang out at their house once in a while. I was like, man, I'm hanging out at the flagman's house, gosh, this is like taboo. But yeah,
Pat and Linda are great people, though. They really got to be good friends with a lot of race car drivers, and we've spent some time with them outside the racetrack too, so it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's all back to the people that you meet.
Yeah, no, for sure. A lot of wonderful people I've met along the way. I can say the exact same thing. If there's anything that you wish that people knew about you that they don't, what would it be? Could be anything that you enjoy doing that people don't know about you, anything.
I don't know that I even have something that somebody doesn't know about me. I think
I've been asking this question, and I don't know if I have an answer. If someone asked me it, I don't know if I'd have it in return either.
Well, nowadays with social media, and if you're active on it, and you've seen some stuff that I have, I mean, I put stuff on there, and you see more things of people, sides of people that you probably didn't see years ago. So, there's probably not a lot of things out there that people don't know about me. You even think about people that you work with, and I've always been a big guy. A big thing about work, because I was a supervisor. I always try to keep it to work, and other people don't. They like to tell you. So a lot of people about my work don't know a lot about my outside, but then again, they see on Facebook like, hey, I see you were out doing this weekend, or how was the pool party, or whatever it was, so they do see it. So I think that's where you get a little bit more, where you don't really have much secrets, and people don't really know, something. There's not really much about that people don't know about me,
Yeah, that'll happen when those phones are always in our hands, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. There's probably not a lot. I mean, yeah. I don't do much other than racing, honestly. I mentioned spending a little bit more time with my wife. We recently bought a side by side and
Okay.
like to go out and do some of that stuff. And went maple syrup hopping last week or a couple weeks ago. That was kind of fun to see. Some of our friends got maple syrup shacks. That's pretty big up in our neck of the woods, and just to relax and do more of that stuff is what I'm looking forward to. I told myself I turned 50 this year, so I told myself I spent pretty much my 40s and 50s in the race shop and going to racetracks, and I want to see what my 50s to my 60s is going to bring, and maybe do some other things and
yeah,
whether it be just traveling around or sitting at home doing nothing. Sooner or later, a guy's going to have to slow down a little bit because his body probably isn't going to be able to keep up with you.
Yeah, I've been told that happens.
Yeah. I can tell. I can tell that it's happening to me. So, yeah. But I'm just not that type of guy. I don't like to sit on the couch and watch movies. I like to be out in the shop working on stuff and doing all that. So, I think that's probably going to continue for a long time for me, especially with my nephew coming up and racing and still having racing in our family. So, and then you never know. Maybe I'll be getting some cars and renting them out and still going to some races. So I don't ever see myself stepping away from it. Probably maybe just stepping back a little bit from it someday. So
Yeah. Changes are good sometimes, right?
Yeah, I don't know how much racing I'm going to do myself. You'd think you look at some of these guys that race all the way up into their 60s and all that, and you're like, I thought to myself, am I going to be one of them guys or not? And I don't think I'm going to be. I think the role that I've been doing here lately and being a mentor and wrenching on race cars and doing stuff like that, I see myself more being in that role than being even a driver, So you would think I miss driving more than I do, but I don't really. I mean, it's fun, it's something in my blood, but I'm still involved in racing in some way and some aspect, and I do love working on them. So, yeah.
That's cool. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good. You can still find a passion in that and enjoyment in that. So,
yeah.
Do you know maybe a race that you're doing this year?
I don't.
Okay.
I honestly don't. Oktoberfest has been tough on me the last 2 years. I've been. I shouldn't say the last 2 years. Last year I didn't bring my car to Oktoberfest, but the 2 years prior, I brought my car there, and I believe I was almost running in the top 5 in the big race at the end of the race, and wound up wrecking both times. And it's just like, man, I told myself I just don't know if I want to do that again. But talking with the guys in the shop, like, yeah, we should get that super late ready for Oktoberfest again. I'm like, yeah.
You've always ran well there.
Yeah. So might do that. There's that All-Star Challenge, I think it is, for the lake bottles.
Yeah.
I think they got a race at Golden Sands.
Okay.
I might think about bringing it there. I'd like to check that race out and see. I, believe it or not, have not raced on an 8-inch tire since like 1997, something like that. So I don't know how well I don't even know how well I would do on one. So we'll see how that goes. But we will have the car out in 2 weeks at Slinger. I will not be driving it, but the car will be there, and I got my partner's driving it. So we're still getting there. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, be on the lookout for Chris Weinkauf, maybe at Oktoberfest, maybe at Golden Sands, and in your limited late model, pro late model, whatever they're calling it these days, and awesome.
Maybe in a legend car. Well,
And a legend car.
I'll have to get that running, so maybe we'll get you in there once.
Oh boy. Yeah, I got a little bit to learn with the Midwest truck stuff. It's there's a little different finesse to those things. So I gotta.
Good luck to you on that. I mean, how is that going? Are you how many races you got underneath your belt in the truck?
I haven't put the schedule out. I'll put my schedule out there before this episode comes out, but I'm for sure gonna do half of the season. I'm gonna do 8 races. I'm gonna do the first 5, and then there's 3 other ones throughout the year. One of them is Oktoberfest. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe it'll turn into a full season deal. We'll see. But yeah, I really enjoyed. I think I always kept an eye on the Midwest Truck Series. I always thought, like, man, you know what? I'd like to hop in one of those. There's, a lot less going on with them, but I think it was more how even they are to a degree.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I'd really like to know how I fare up against other people just when, some things are a little more equalized. And not that I don't like when they're not, but it was just, I always thought they were a cool series. And, as a truck is something a little different. And I enjoyed jumping in there. And it's easy to enjoy it too. When the first time I hopped in it, I got second at Madison.
Yeah.
I hadn't been to Madison in probably 10. It was like 9 or 10 years. I hadn't been there in anything. So to jump in that and run pretty well was fun. It was like, oh yeah, I'll jump back in it. And yeah, I appreciate those guys giving me a Trevor and Paul. And I just had a lot of fun with those guys too. I think when you have fun doing something, you meet people and have a lot of fun doing it. Like, I'll come back for a little more.
Yeah, it's something that I'm interested in getting back into too. I built 2 Midwest trucks in my shop already.
Okay.
So I built the one that Levon drove, and then I built one more after that, and a guy drove it and sold it. But from the ground up,
Did you ever get in one and drive it?
I drove one of Levon's once at Oktoberfest and finished second as well.
Okay.
So
Nice.
To Reagan May. So yeah, I finished second in my only start. But I'd like to get back into it again too. I think that's another fun series.
It is.
Like you said, I just like the competitiveness. I think it's the 10-inch tire thing and lower horsepower, and it's pretty neat to run one of them.
Yeah, it's a good series. Mm-hmm. Well, best of luck to you this year.
You too.
And I appreciate you coming on. It's been a lot of fun.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good luck to the rest of the episodes too.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, this has been a good time, and hope to keep bringing a bunch of great people on. So I appreciate all the awesome stories, Chris, and I'm sure everyone else will enjoy them too.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you for listening in on another episode of Speed and Grease. And if it was your first episode, I really appreciate you checking us out, checking out Speed and Grease, seeing what we're all about, listening to our amazing guests and their fantastic stories. And if you like the show, if you got some laughs out of it, even if you didn't like the show, thank you for joining us, taking that time. If you're not, wherever you like to listen in, check out, cool things that we're posting, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever, Amazon Music. Give us a like, follow us, leave a comment, a rating. Really appreciate it. Really helps the show get noticed, and helps spread the word and keep these stories out there. And the more people that can hear these great stories, the better. Spreading as Jerry Guiley would say, spreading the gospel of racing, and just want to keep it moving. So thank you for listening.